Hey Days of Our Lives fans, it's Radhika from Radhika Storyline, and we're going to talk about Kristen's possible exit, Lexie's heartbreaking choice, and all the warning signs on Days of Our Lives. But first, please hit subscribe if you're not already following us. So, today on Days of Our Lives, we got one of those episodes where half the town was being sweet and romantic, and the other half was quietly preparing emotional destruction, which honestly is very on brand for Salem. We started with Kristen showing up at Abe and Lexie's place and finding Lexie on the couch, and for one second it looked like the worst had happened. But no, Lexie was just asleep, which, thank goodness, because Salem loves making people look 6 feet under for no reason. Kristen was relieved, and Lexie explained she had been dreaming about Abe and Theo, which immediately gave the whole scene this bittersweet tone. And then Kristen got down to business, because of course she did. EJ is shipping her off tomorrow night, and Kristen needs Lexie ready for the plan. That alone is a mess. Kristen did tell her that if she couldn't go through with it, they could figure something else out, which was interesting because for Kristen that almost counts as gentle. But Lexie said she was still in, and Kristen explained about the geolocator she would activate so Lexie could find her once EJ's people grab her. So right there, the show made it very clear that this is not some vague backup idea. There is an actual escape setup in motion, and both sisters know it. Then came the goodbye energy, and wow, it was heavy. Nobody says I love you in Salem without making me suspicious. Now, over with Abe and Lexie, things somehow got even more emotional. Lexie was writing thank you notes, which were obviously goodbye letters, and honestly, that was already painful enough. But then Abe came home with their wedding rings. He had taken them out of the safe deposit box, and because her death certificate had been rescinded, he wanted to renew their vows. So yes, the man unknowingly walked straight into the most heartbreaking timing imaginable. It was sweet, it was loving, and it was also a total emotional ambush on the audience. And Abe's vows were beautiful, and then he slipped Lexie's ring back on her finger. But when it was her turn, her hands were trembling so badly, she could barely get his ring on. Abe, being Abe, just took it as emotion, which to be fair it was, but not in the simple way he thought. Lexie was practically sobbing through her vows, and that scene really worked because you could feel how torn she was. She clearly loves this man. She clearly does not want to hurt him, and yet she is still moving toward a goodbye she can't say out loud. Honestly, that was rough. So then we got Brady and Marlena visiting Rachel at Bayview, and the mood shifted for a minute into something lighter. They surprised Rachel by telling her she was coming home tomorrow, and she was thrilled, which was nice. Marlena headed out after some loving words, and Rachel and Brady talked excitedly about her coming home, being with Tate, and having Esmores, which was adorable and almost suspiciously normal for this show. Because the second Salem gives a child a happy little plan, you know adults are about to ruin it with secrets. And that brings us right back to Kristen, who finally made it over there and was immediately clocked by Rachel for looking sad. Rachel noticed. Rachel always notices. Kristen tried to brush it off and say she just missed her, but Rachel, being completely sincere and unknowingly twisting the knife, said they had forever now. Or, until tomorrow if Kristen's exit plan actually happens. Rachel ran off to get her artwork, and then Brady started triple-checking whether Rachel was safe around EJ. That felt important. Kristen assured him everything was handled, and then she started giving Brady her own version of thank yous and very obvious goodbyes. Just like Lexie, she was close to tears by the end of it, and Brady looked like he knew something was off. Not all the way, maybe, but enough to make me raise an eyebrow. Now, over at Small Bar, Belle found Stephanie waiting for Alex, and since nobody in Salem knows how to leave a wound alone, Belle brought up Joy. She reminded Stephanie about what happened with Sean and Jan, and how yes, they did eventually divorce, but Belle believed that her own jealousy and paranoia helped push Sean away. So basically Belle was trying to warn Stephanie not to self-sabotage, which I actually liked. It felt honest, and it didn't magically erase the problem, but it gave Stephanie something real to think about. And meanwhile, Chad found Alex in the middle of a phone call, yelling at Philip to sell the house and save the company. Very subtle, very calm, very not Alex. Once he got off the phone, Alex warned Chad that the family feud needs to end before everyone sinks, and then he launched into all of his Stephanie and Joy drama. Chad, to his credit, gave the usual supportive "we'll get through it" response, which was kind, if not exactly groundbreaking. Still, the point landed. Titan is in trouble, Alex is under pressure, and his personal life is wobbling at the exact same time. So then the guys headed to small bar for date night, and the contrast between the two couples was honestly pretty funny. Chad was downright giddy when he surprised Belle with 2 first-class tickets to Milan. Very romantic, very extra, very Chad. But Belle had already done research and discovered that the clue they were chasing pointed to Rome instead. So naturally they decided to do both, because if you're going to hunt clues in Italy, you may as well travel in style. And I have to say, these two were fun today. Sneaky, flirty, a little ridiculous. I liked it. And Stephanie and Alex were a lot more awkward at first, which made sense. But Stephanie stepped up and told Alex he's a good man and that she's lucky to be married to him. That was exactly what he needed to hear, especially with Titan hanging by a thread. Alex admitted how serious the company drama is, how much the family has poured into it, and how they could lose everything. Stephanie thanked him for being honest, and even offered her book royalties to help. So they ended the night acting like real partners, which was nice, though I did laugh a little at the idea of royalties saving Titan's empire. Still, the support mattered more than the math. Now, Sean and Jada also got a softer scene at the pub after workout, and this relationship is moving fast enough that I almost feel like I missed a week. They flirted. They talked about whether Sean can get back to active duty, and Jada admitted she's a little sad because once he's officially cleared, he won't have to stay with her anymore. And Sean's answer was basically, well, then I want to stay. So yes, apparently we are all in on this pairing now. Jada also said she's been distracted and hasn't really been there for Stephanie lately, which is true, and Sean encouraged her to go be with her friend if she needed to. So that was mature and kind and almost too functional for Salem, but I'll allow it. And in the final moments, the episode made sure to leave a trail of loose ends everywhere. Belle and Chad stepped out into the square and agreed not to tell anyone where they were going, only to immediately run into Marlena and basically blurt out that they were taking a trip to Italy. Incredible secrecy there, guys. Absolutely elite. Abe wanted to plan a second honeymoon, but Lexie already had an excuse ready about seeing her poor, ailing mother tomorrow night, which was clearly her cover. And then Brady, unlike Abe, seemed to genuinely catch that something was going on with Kristen. But before he could really push, Rachel interrupted, and Kristen just smothered her with love. So the episode ended with romance, suspicion, and panic all sitting in the same room together. So let's talk about what I think this all means, because this episode was basically a parade of emotional setup. First up, I suspect Lexie is absolutely going through with leaving Abe, and that is why the vow renewal happened now. The show did not make her cry through those vows for nothing. That was not just a sentimental scene. That was a goodbye scene disguised as a love scene, which honestly is such a soap move. And because Abe has no clue, the devastation is only going to hit harder when the truth lands. If Lexie were wavering in a way that might stop the plan, I think the writing would have shown more hesitation and more open doubt. Instead, what we got was pain. She knows what she's doing, and she knows what it will cost. And I'm betting the ailing mother excuse becomes the final doorway out. It is just specific enough to sound believable, but also just convenient enough to scream setup. Abe wants a second honeymoon. He's leaning into this renewed future, and Lexie already has one foot out the door. That mismatch is what makes this story work. One person is planning the next chapter, the other is quietly writing the ending. Brutal. Next, I wonder if Brady is going to be the first one to blow Kristen's exit plan open, because he looked far less clueless than Abe did. Brady triple-checking Rachel's safety around EJ was not random. And Kristen's goodbye speech to him was way too emotional to pass as a normal conversation. She was basically radiating final farewell energy. So I could easily see Brady replaying that scene in his head and realizing, after the fact, that Kristen was telling him goodbye without saying the words directly. And if Brady does catch on, that could create a real panic point, because then the question becomes whether he tries to stop her, protect Rachel, confront EJ, or all three. Honestly, that is where things could get messy fast. Brady is emotional, Kristen is emotional, EJ is controlling, and Rachel is caught in the middle like always. That is a recipe for tears and bad decisions. Another possibility is that Rachel becomes the emotional trigger that makes Kristen almost back out. Not because Kristen doesn't want freedom, but because that goodbye with Rachel was so loaded. Rachel saying they have forever now is one of those lines that lands like a punch because the child means hope and the adult hears guilt. So I could see Kristen moving ahead with the plan, but doing it with far more hesitation after that moment. And hesitation in Salem usually means mistakes. Now, I also think Abe is being set up for a very hard fall, and I hate to say it because he was so sincere today. The man brought out the rings, renewed vows, and started talking second honeymoon, and meanwhile the audience is sitting there knowing Lexie may be about to vanish. That is not subtle foreshadowing. That is the show basically hanging a heartbreak loading sign over his head. So my guess is Abe is going to feel blindsided in the worst possible way, because from his perspective everything was finally being restored. And honestly, the rescinded death certificate detail makes this even sadder. Abe is treating it like the return of life, stability, and family. Lexie is treating it like one last chance to say goodbye as his wife. Same facts, completely different emotional reality. That is why the scene hits so hard. Here's another one. I'm betting Belle and Chad's Italy trip is not going to stay cute and glamorous for long. Right now it feels flirty and adventurous, and I enjoyed that, but the show made a point of having them act secretive and then immediately fail at being secretive. That tells me this trip matters. If the clue leads to something real, then Milan and Rome are not just postcard backdrops. They are story engines. And once Salem characters start traveling in pursuit of clues, peace usually stays home. I could see the Italy trip pulling Belle and Chad even closer, because there was a very easy chemistry between them today, especially compared to all the angst around everyone else. But I also wonder if the secrecy around where they're going is going to create problems the minute someone realizes they are off chasing something important. So yes, fun vibes now, but I do not think this stays all first-class smiles and travel flirting. Another possibility is that Stephanie and Alex are stable for the moment, but not actually out of danger. And I say that because their scene was warm, supportive, and honestly needed, but the issues around Joy did not magically disappear just because Belle gave Stephanie perspective. Stephanie chose trust today, which was smart. Alex chose honesty, which was also smart. But Titan's crisis is still there, family tension is still there, and money stress has a way of dragging everything else back to the surface. And I have to say, Stephanie offering her royalties was sweet, but it also tells you how serious things feel to her now. She is not standing on the sidelines anymore. She is investing. So if Titan keeps spiraling, I could see that pressure starting to weigh on their marriage again, even if they are in a better place emotionally right now. Support is great. Financial disaster is still financial disaster. And last but not least, I really think Sean and Jada are moving fast enough that the show is inviting us to ask whether this is solid or just convenient comfort. I'm not saying it's fake. I'm saying it accelerated quickly, mostly off-screen, and when that happens on soaps, I always get suspicious. They clearly like each other, the scenes were easy, and Sean saying he wants to stay with her was charming. But I wonder if the real test comes once he is fully back on his feet, and normal life starts pressing in. It's easy to connect in a cocoon. It's harder when routine shows up. And let me know what you think, because I can already hear people split on that one. Some viewers are going to love the pairing because it feels natural, and others are going to say, wait, when exactly did this become a whole relationship? Both reactions are fair, honestly. So, as a secondary storyline, I also think the Titan feud is quietly becoming more dangerous than the characters are acting. Alex screaming at Philip to sell the house, talking about the family all sinking, and then trying to hold his personal life together at the same time. That is not stable ground. Chad was supportive, sure, but support only goes so far if the company really is circling the drain. So even though today played that thread more as relationship stress and family frustration, I would not be shocked if the Titan mess starts bleeding into everything else very soon. My verdict is this. Lexie is leaving, Brady is going to realize Kristen is hiding something, and Abe is the one headed for the biggest heartbreak. The romance today was real, but so were the goodbye signals, and I think Salem is about to get hit with the fallout all at once. We'll see. Thank you for being a loyal listener. Follow us wherever you get your podcast because you don't want to miss the next episode. Rodica Storyline is on all the major podcast platforms including Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more.